and welcome to another online ELA lesson with Miss Maloney. So, before we get started, let's go over our standard and objectives for today. Our standard from today comes from RL 3.6, stating, distinguish their own point of view from that of the narrator or those of the characters. So, our objective of today is I can compare the point of view of the narrator or characters. And we can't forget our video norms and materials. Norm number 1, please always have some paper and a pencil with a good eraser to take great notes. Number 2, listen carefully for there will be questions throughout our session. Number 3, pause, reflect, and rewind. Number 3, pause, reflect, rewind, and review if you need to. So there will be 3 parts of this video. Number 1, define point of view. Number 2, read one short story. And number 3, model by using types of narrators chart. What do you think point of view means? According to literaryterms.net, point of view is what the character or narrator telling the story can see his or her perspective. The author chooses who is to tell the story by determining the point of view. When I refer to perspective in the definition of point of view, I'm simply just saying the way you are viewing something. So in this anchor chart, it explains who is telling the story based off of the point of view. So point of view can be told in either first, second, or third person. In first person, it is told by a character in the story, just one. And you can use the keywords of I, me, or we, or my, or myself, and there's many others that describes only one person telling the story. If you are saying it in second person, the narrator will try not to address the reader by using the words you, your, or yours. If you're talking in third person, the narrator is not a part of the story at all. You have something called omniscient and limited omniscient. If you are omniscient person in the story, you're all knowing. You know all parts of the story as you are telling it. If you're only a limited omniscient, you don't know every part of the story, so you might have somebody have a dialogue where they're talking back and forth, and then the author or whoever's telling the story is going to hop in and tell it how they see it. You'll be using the keywords of he, she, and names of people. You can also use the words they, them, and so forth. Get it? If you haven't gotten it yet, let's try reading The True Story of the Three Little Pigs, looking at the point of view of the wolf side of the story.
Everybody knows the story of the Three Little Pigs, or at least they think they do. But I'll let you in on a little secret. Nobody knows the real story because nobody has ever heard my side of the story. I'm the wolf, Alexander T. Wolf. You can call me Al. I don't know how this whole big bad wolf thing got started, but it's all wrong. Maybe it's because of our diet. Hey, it's not my fault that wolves eat cute little animals like bunnies and sheep and pigs. That's just the way we are. If cheeseburgers were cute, folks would probably think you were big and bad too. But like I was saying, this whole big bad wolf thing is all wrong. The real story is about a sneeze and a cup of sugar. This is the real story. Way back in Once Upon a Time, I was making a birthday cake for my dear old granny. I had a terrible sneezing cold. I ran out of sugar. So I walked down the street to ask my neighbor for a cup of sugar. Now, this neighbor was a pig, and he wasn't too bright either. He had built his whole house out of straw. Can you believe it? I mean, who builds their house out of straw? So, of course, the minute I knocked on the straw house, it fell right in. I didn't want to just walk into somebody else's house, so I called, little pig, are you in?" No answer. I was just about to go home without that cup of sugar for my dear old granny's birthday cake. And that's when my nose started to itch. I felt a sneeze coming on. Well, I huffed, and I snuffed, and I sneezed a great sneeze. And you know what? That whole darn straw house fell down. And right in the middle of that pile of straw was the first little pig, dead as a doornail. He'd been home the whole time. It seemed like a shame to leave a perfectly good ham dinner lying there in the straw, so I ate it up. Think of it as a big cheeseburger just lying there. Well, I was feeling a little better, but I still didn't have my cup of sugar, so I went to the next neighbor's house. Now, this neighbor was the first little pig's brother, and he was a little smarter, but not much. He built his house out of sticks. I rang the bell on the stick house. Nobody answered. I called, Mr. Pig, are you in?" He yelled back, "Go away, wolf. You can't come in. I'm shaving the hairs on my chinny chin chin." I had just grabbed the doorknob when I felt another sneeze coming on. I huffed, and I snuffed, and I tried to cover my mouth, but I sneezed a great sneeze. And, you're not going to believe it, but this little pig's house fell down just like his brother's. And when the dust had cleared, there was the second little pig, dead as a doornail. Wolf's honor. Now, you know food will spoil if you leave it out in the open, so I did the only thing there was to do. I had dinner again. Think of it as a second helping. I was getting awfully full, but my cold was feeling a little better, and I still didn't have my cup of sugar for my dear old granny's birthday cake. So I went to the next house. Now, this guy was the first and second little pig's brother. He must have been the brains of the family. He had built his house of bricks. I knocked on the brick house. No answer. I called, Mr. Pig, are you in?" And do you know what that rude little porker answered? "Get out of here, wolf. Don't bother me again." Talk about impolite. He probably had a whole sack full of sugar, and he wouldn't give me just one little cup for my dear, sweet old granny's birthday cake. What a pig. I was just about to go home and maybe make a nice birthday card instead of a cake when I felt my cold coming on. I huffed, and I snuffed, and I sneezed once again, and then that's when that third little pig yelled, "Hey, your old granny can sit on a pin." Now, I'm usually a pretty calm fellow, but when somebody talks about my granny like that, I go a little crazy. When the cops drove up, of course I was trying to break down the pig's door. And the whole time I was huffing and puffing and sneezing and making a real scene. Well, the rest, as they say, is history. The news reporters found out about those two pigs I had for dinner. They figured a sick guy going to borrow a cup of sugar didn't sound very exciting. So they jazzed up the story with all that huff and puff and blow your house down stuff. And they made me the big bad wolf. That's it. The real story. I was framed. but maybe you could loan me a cup of sugar. The end.
So I hope you all enjoyed the story of the true story of the three little pigs and the point of view of the big bad wolf. So this is the chart that you will be using to complete your narrator's point of view chart. So here's an example. I can reread the story again. So the directions says click the video to watch and read along with the story, and then answer the point of view questions on the next pages. So here are the questions. The first thing you need to answer is about knowledge. What type of narrator does the author use to tell this story? How do you know? What is the narrator's point of view on events in the story? How do you know? So you type your answer in the box on this side, and I have typed the type of narrator the author uses to tell this story is in first person. I know this because the author uses the word I when speaking. The narrator's point of view in the story is the wolf's point of view. I know this because throughout the story, the wolf was describing how he felt at each house. The second thing you need to answer is about comparison. Now, we learned about comparison last week when we compared and contrast. So, the question is, how does the narrator's point of view differ from the points of view in other characters in the story? I wrote, the narrator's point of view is different from the points of view of the other characters in the story because the pigs believed that the wolf came to huff and puff and blow their houses down on purpose to eat them. The wolf's point of view was that he had allergies and accidentally blew their houses down when he sneezed. And the last question, analysis. How does the author's choice of narrator point of view shape the story? Your experience as a reader, and how would the story be different if it were told in a different narrator point of view, and why? So I have written, the author's choice of narrator point of view shapes the story because it gives the feelings of the character that is not talked about in the original story. My experience as the reader was good because it was nice knowing how all the characters felt in the story and not just one viewpoint. The story would be different if it was told by a different narrator or a point of view because they would not know exactly how the character feels or thinks, only based off of their actions. It will be your turn. You will read, honestly, Red Riding Hood was rotten. And you will complete exactly how I completed mine with writing your answers in the box where it says knowledge, analysis, and comparison. So I hope you got a great perspective of how to compare a point of view, that of the narrator or character within the story. But before we go, I would love to leave you with this short video to recap what is point of view. Let's take a look.
Point of view refers to who is telling the story. First person means writing from the author's point of view or perspective. Common words used in first person are I and me. Second person is a point of view where the narrator tells the story to another character using the word you. When using second person, the author could be talking to the audience. We can tell this by the use of you, your, or your. Third person point of view is told by a narrator who is not part of the story. When writing in third person, words such as he, she, it, and they are commonly used.
And at last, but never not least, your next step, which is to read your own story and figure out how to compare the point of view of the narrator or character within that story. Let's see how you do. So, until next time.